afternoon, Dr. Gilli. I thank you on behalf of the Diplomacy Festival team for taking part in this year's event. Andrea Gilli is a senior researcher in military affairs at the NATO Defense College in Rome and an affiliate of the Center for International Security Cooperation of Stanford University. Gilli is among the handful of Europe-based security studies scholars whose publications are and have been assigned for classes in the most prestigious universities in the world, including Harvard, Stanford, Columbia, and University of California, Berkeley, and so on. And the paper that we're going to be talking about today is called Imitation, Innovation, Disruption, Challenges to NATO's Superiority in Military Technology. And this paper has been written with his brother, Mauro Gilli, who is a senior researcher in military technology and international security. And his research interests include security studies, military innovations, political economy, and political economy of national security and asymmetric wars. And he's currently working on a book manuscript whose provisional title is Military Technological Superiority. And thank you beforehand, Andrea Gilli, for the intervention.
Well, thank you very much for having me again with you. It's a great pleasure. So what I'm going to do is to summarize this paper I co-wrote for the NATO Defense College called Innovation, Imitation, and Disruption. The simple idea behind the paper is that the key debate in the international security environment is that because of technological change, we are going to see a dramatic transformation on the international environment. In particular, the change in technology we are observing risk, according to some, level the playing field. What does level the playing field means? Basically, the change in technology will enable countries which lag behind when it comes to military technology to reach the most advanced ones. So we know that the United States has the most advanced technology and weapon systems in the world, according to these this dominant perspective, because of artificial intelligence, because of cyber espionage, because of a set of other dynamics. Countries like China, Russia, or Iran will soon be able to catch up to reach the same technological level. What we do in this paper is basically show some skepticism, or at least reassure that this catching up is not going to occur as fast and as intensively as some believe or maintain. For a simple main reason. So, and to explain our argument, we need to look a bit back. We need to look at what has happened starting from 1850. So, the world we are living in, many are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, but in the reality, most of us have lived in a world that deeply shaped by the second industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution is basically that entire technological, economic, and also social political transformation, which started towards the end of the 19th century, around 1870. Since then, what happened at that time, there was literally a level playing field, meaning that the invention of modern science, the invention of modern disciplines like engineering, for instance, permitted multiple countries to develop advanced, what were back then advanced weapon systems. Also because the technologies, the know-how, the machine tools were basically the same. So if a company was producing, for instance, bicycles, could easily move from bicycles to sewing machines. From sewing machines was not difficult to move to the production of cars. And from the production of cars, countries could move to the production of tanks. And from the production of tanks, which were used in World War I, they could move also to the production of airplane. What we saw literally in a matter of a few decades is that many countries could produce advanced or what were back then advanced weapon systems. And so there was a constant catching up and imitation, innovation competition. The world we're living in, however, has changed. And has changed because since then, the complexity of weapon systems has dramatically increased. What does it mean that the complexity of weapon systems has increased? Three main issues. First of all, the number of components has dramatically skyrocketed. So in the 1920s, an airplane was made of a few hundred pieces, a few hundred components. decade after decade, from few hundred to few thousand, from 2,000 to several thousands. Nowadays, a jet fighter is made of hundreds of thousands of components. At the same time, the sophistication of those components has dramatically increased. So, for instance, an aircraft pilot in the 1920s has sensors, had the eyes and the ears, because there were no other sensors on board. Nowadays, the jet fighter pilot uses the eyes, but mostly to see what long-range sensors, infrared, the radar, and so for basically gathering the environment when they scan the horizon and basically bring back. As a result, the range of operation of a jet fighter is by a magnitude superior to what it was over 100 years ago. What does it mean in practical terms? First of all, innovation back then, 100 years ago, was much easier. The guy who invented the submarine was a priest who decided to move to, it was an Irish priest that wanted to fight the Royal Navy, who moved to New Jersey and created a company which still nowadays is one of the leading submarine companies in the world. It's called Electric Boat. But the principles behind the submarine were really, really basic and simple. And in fact, and here we come to imitation, countries which basically neglected submarines could, in a matter of few years, not only enter, but even overtake the entire realm. For instance, both Great Britain and Germany before World War I ignored the capabilities of submarines for different reasons, some bureaucratic, some strategic. But when it became apparent that submarines were truly functioning weapon systems, the two countries entered into the domain and in a matter of few years could produce more advanced submarines than the countries which first invented them. However, nowadays, because of the change of technology I just discussed, innovation, disruption and imitation are much more difficult. So even if a country has all the access to the technology, to the blueprints, to the designs of its competitors' weapon systems, it will struggle enormously to imitate that platform. What does it mean? It means, for instance, that countries can use cyber espionage to gather data, gather information about their adversaries' weapon systems, but they will probably lack the know-how, the advanced machine tools, as well as the organizational capabilities to just make sense of all those information. And in fact, we had several examples that support these insights. For instance, we know that China has tried to imitate the most advanced weapon systems of the United States, but so far has not succeeded. At the same time, also innovation is much more difficult. Let me give you an example. In 1905-1906, Great Britain developed a revolutionary concept of battleship that was called Dreadnought. That battleship took just around less than 2 years between the conceptual development and the construction of the warship. Nowadays, it takes several years only to design a new concept. The reason is because the complexity of military technology is so advanced, not only one's military technology, but also the adversaries. So the weapon systems that one needs to neutralize in order to be effective in battle. So as a result, the times are extremely long, and the resources are high, and the skills required are extraordinary. Finally, and somehow related, also disruption is more difficult. And this goes to another paper I also spoke here with Festival Diplomacy, which is about the capabilities of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, 5G networks, which it's true that they have enormous promises, but in order to exploit them in battle, it's going to be an enormous challenge. Why? Because the complexity of technology, which has risen exponentially over the past several decades, will grow further as there will be a migration of complexity from the components to the systems, jet fighters, submarines, and from the systems to the networks. So making sure that the entire network connected connected in cloud computing through 5G networks and employ machine learning, that it works perfectly, and at each single node there is no problem, no friction, no problem of interoperability, as well as vulnerability to enemy systems, is extremely challenging. Where does this lead us? Well, this leads us to several conclusions, including that, for instance, for an alliance like NATO, trying to maximize the comparative advantage. So every country is good doing certain things. Maximizing those technological industrial capabilities is a good way to exploit the capabilities of the alliance. Similarly, it's not surprising that given NATO's technological superiorities, many of its adversaries are trying to wage an indirect campaign through, for instance, political warfare, disinformation, hybrid tactics, and so forth. However, this does not mean that NATO is going to be strong forever, because maintaining technological superiority requires investment in R&D, in defense, and so forth. And with these, I close, and I look forward for the questions.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the intervention. I will be asking some questions that students are interested about. So the first question is, in the article, you have explained the role of the so-called disruptive technologies developed by some countries, how much NATO needs to comply with them for defensive reasons and possibly to embrace and use them.
Okay, if I understand correctly the question, because of the different changes in technology, there is a set of emerging technologies, which are sometimes called emerging, other times disruptive, other times they are labeled in different way, which some of them can truly be game changer. By game changer, I mean that they can really affect the way we do business in the world of defense. But let me give a simple example to everyday's life so that it's easier to try to transpose the logic to the world of defense. Amazon, already in 2012, patented a technology which would work as follows. Nowadays, Amazon can predict more or less 5% of the things we buy online. But that technology says that once one day, Amazon won't wait for us to go on his website and click and buy some products. The technology will directly send us what the algorithms thinks that we need. What's the logic? The logic is that as algorithms increase in prediction, and so rather than being having a 5% accuracy rate, when the algorithm will be 95% accuracy rate, for Amazon, there's no point of waiting that we go on the website and we buy. It's much cheaper, is much more effective, it's much more efficient to directly send us what we need. And even if sometimes the algorithm is wrong, the cost of returning a good is actually not that much. Why is that relevant? Think about this logic applied to the world of defense, where, for instance, a software knows ahead of time when for instance, a unit is going to run out of bullets, or when maintenance of certain aircraft is going to be conducted, or when there will be demand for bandwidth in a certain place, and so how we are going to support. These are really going to change the way we operate in the field. We think about campaigns, we think about defense, and so forth. But integrating all these technologies is not just easy as well. Thinking about it, because many of the challenges that integrating these technologies pose just emerge as on the field in a way as we try to integrate them. And handling all this process, handling all these this transition is far from easy. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes skilled personnel, which is really a main challenge.
Thank you very much. So I go with the second question. Can the lack of a long-lasting technological primacy present a serious threat to the defense of NATO?
That's an interesting question. So yes and no, meaning that when, like everywhere, in every aspect of life, you want to be on the stronger side. So being sure that at this stage, in this phase of history, NATO countries can count on the most advanced weapon systems available is obviously something that is great for defense, for deterrence, for dissuasion, because also eventual adversaries are fully aware of this. There is a caveat, however, that obviously military technological superiority is not a condition for success, is not a condition for victory, is not a condition for deterrence, and because actually war and warfare and defense are political phenomenon, and as such must be understood. For instance, giving signals of political weakness suggests that the hardware becomes less important. But also, if we look at the military campaigns of the past 200 years, we see that the human factor is extremely important. If you have the wrong strategy, for instance, you can have the best technology ever, but you're going to lose. Similarly, if the human capital, both on the field, but also on the headquarters, are not qualified, are not competent, are not motivated, obviously this presents a challenge. And so, you may have the best technology, but you may not be able to use it in the best way, in the most effective way. So, does change in technology in a way questions or represent a challenge for NATO? Yes, I believe it's important to try to maintain technological superiority, but it's also important to remember that other factors are equally important and must be cultivated as well.
Thanks a lot for the answers, and I think it will be it for today. And have a nice day. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you.